The Beaman Monster of the Kansas City, Missouri area is said to be some sort of hybrid primate. Kansas City has its share of unusual things: scary winged flying creatures, terrifying black-eyed children, a later post, those odd folks in dark alleys that stare at you, don't ask, and apparently, a very ugly and odd monster of its own, the Beaman Monster. This would be a creature that could give anyone a few nightmares if they should chance upon it in the woods or countryside around Kansas City. I may be stretching our area a bit, but Kansas City does not have a wall between Missouri and Kansas, so I am counting it in Kansas, and there are accounts of it being spotted on both sides of the border. Apparently, long ago in 1904, the circus, with their clowns, high-wire acts, trained animals, cotton candy, and laughter, gave so many small towns welcome relief from the drudgery of normal daily life, was traveling through Kansas. The circus was loaded on a train chugging its way through Kansas City with many crates and cages housing their scary lions, tigers, and bears display animals, as well as trained elephants and other animals, all hoping to all children and audiences alike. As the train was traveling through Kansas City, there was a problem along the train tracks, and unfortunately, many of the cars and cages containing the circus animals were violently tossed to ground when the train derailed in a cacophony of roars, growls, whines, and tweets. Many of the animals were injured, and several more escaped the confines of their cages. The majority of the animals that escaped after the derailment were caught and contained, but one escaped to never be seen again. Or maybe not. The story goes that when the train derailed, one of the most feared and prized creatures, a 12-foot gorilla, was one of the animals that escaped. The legend also states that this gorilla apparently became amorous and somehow mated with a wolf, and the Beaman Monster is the result of this unholy matchup. It is described as a huge, hairy beast with the head of a wolf and the body of a gorilla, but is bipedal. This terrifying creature has been sighted killing stock and leaving very large tracks, with a stride too far apart for the normal human stride. Some describe it as a wolf-bigfoot hybrid, or sometimes just a large coyote or wolf. There are those who say the wolfish face is terrifyingly too human. Russell Holman, from Sedalia, tells the story of the train wreck to fandom. Russell Holman, an 81-year-old native of Sedalia, said that the legend of the Beaman Monster can be traced back to the 1900s. His father had told him a circus train got wrecked in the year 1904. Several animals used in the circus shows were aboard. During the train crash, a 12-foot tall gorilla escaped. Many people believe that the Beaman Monster was really the offspring of the escaped gorilla. This story, seemingly the crux of the legend, seems faulty in many respects. But there are no 12-foot gorillas, as they are generally around 5.2 to 5.6 feet tall, and they are not totally bipedal, and they cannot mate with a wolf. But why ruin a lovely legend? Mr. Holman also related to fandom that one of his uncles told him about a hunt in the late 1950s by people carrying all sorts of shotguns to catch the Beaman Monster, and that they seemed to like to revive the Beaman Monster story every 50 years. He further discussed how frustrated parents would try to keep their wayward children in line by telling them about this bogeyman. Holman said, "Dad said when the boys would get out of hand, they'd call out the Beaman Monster if you didn't behave. I never did see anything. I assume big, bad monsters in the woods that will get you is a good way to scare children into compliance. The monster under the bed or in the closet comes to mind, but I digress." Demon Smith, now 29, recalls a terrifying experience when he was 10 years old. He was with his uncles in their pickup truck, driving down a country road when a large wolfish beast burst from the woods and began chasing and lunging at the truck's sides. He states, "I've seen what my uncles told me was the Beaman legend. I haven't heard anyone speak of it since I was little. It wasn't quite animalistic. It is hard to explain unless you've seen it." He further spoke of later finding a mauled pig that had no tracks of normal animals around it and seeing a shadowy figure lurking in the woods. He continues to believe in the Beaman Monster, though, I think something does exist that is unexplainable. Steve Mallard also recalls an incident when he was 12 when he and a friend were digging worms behind his friend's barn near Smithton on an early spring morning. They planned to go fishing later that morning and wanted a big mess of worms. Since it was early morning, the dew was still glistening on the grass. They saw a spot in the dew where it looked like a deer or something had laid down. Then they noticed footprints in the dew. There were these huge footprints. We followed them down to the pond and just got spooked. They were big, we couldn't stride that far apart. Mallard remembers this incident vividly, and after gaining an education in Native American lore, he truly believes that the Beaman Monster could certainly exist. He states, "I get made fun of for it all of the time, but I know what I saw that morning, and I'll never forget it." Many believe that the 1950s hunt for the monster was a joke, something to have fun with and scare folks, but to others, this interesting creature may still exist. There have not been any reports of any recent sightings of it for years, which has spurred the belief that if this creature was a gorilla or even the gorilla's offspring, the life expectancy of a gorilla or offspring has long expired, and that it might have died in the woods. Some believe it could be a misidentified Bigfoot, maybe a dogman, or other misidentified animals, but if the Beaman Monster still lives in those woods around Kansas City, it might be good to pay attention to your surroundings.